We're talking to big names in sports about their personal views on life and style on CBS Local Sports Player Style Files. This all-access show gives fans an in-depth personal view of their favorite players' lives. Watch online at cbslocalsports.com.
This sports podcast on Play.it is powered by DraftKings. Sign up for daily fantasy sports for cash.
The wait is finally over. Baseball season is here at last, and the excitement continues all season long at DraftKings.com, the official daily fantasy partner of Major League Baseball. Daily fantasy means no season-long commitments, just instant cash, instant gratification. Why wait until the end of the season to claim victory when you can win huge cash every day? At DraftKings, it's like a brand new season every time you play. Just select 2 pitchers, 8 position players, stay under the salary cap, and you could be on your way to an enormous payday. Last year, Peter from Colorado won $1 million at DraftKings in one day, just playing fantasy baseball. Hundreds of thousands of fantasy sports fans just like you have already called in at DraftKings. Now it's your turn. Woo! Hurry to DraftKings.com now. Use promo code FLAIR to play for free. You could win part of the $300 million in prizes being awarded this season. Use promo code FLAIR, FLAIR, for free entry now at DraftKings.com. DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com. Woo!
A man who wears the 10 pounds of gold, the nature boy, Ric Flair.
You know, I always like to take this opportunity to talk about myself. Woo! Woo!
The 16-time heavyweight champion has arrived.
I've got the style and profile like never before.
The greatest talker in the history of the business is behind the mic once again.
You're talking to the Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, limousine like, jet flying, son of a gun. Woo!
This is Wooooo Nation with Ric Flair.
I'm the man. Ric Flair.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ric Flair, 16 times your world heavyweight champion. Along with my good friend and co-host Conrad Thompson, we do a show called Wooooo Nation, the #1 podcast on CBS. And our guest today is not even arguably, but sincerely coming from me, and I'm sure in the minds of anybody that's ever really known our sport, the greatest babyface, good guy, whatever the terminology you want to use, in the history of the business, the legendary Ricky Steamboat. Ricky, how are you, man?
Hey, champ, I'm doing well.
Down in Tampa?
St. Pete.
You're in St. Pete. I knew that. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a stone's throw away from Madeira Beach.
Yeah, I know. Well, you were born in Tampa, right?
Well, actually, no, but I grew up in St. Pete. Went to schools here.
Well, you won the high school state wrestling championship. At what high school?
Bogosiega.
That's right, yeah. Because you were a couple years behind Mike Graham. A lot of people don't realize Mike Graham was a state champion as well. Remember Mike, right?
Yes. When I was a sophomore and Mike was a senior in the district finals, now you had to win districts. I was in 10th grade.
Yeah.
District finals, you had to win districts, which then when you would qualify you to go to states. I met Michael Gossett for the first time, and he beat me by a point. And there, sitting ringside in the bleachers, was his dad, Eddie.
Yeah. What a small world, huh? A lot of people don't realize, what a tragic situation that's been with Eddie and Mike's son, of course. But, yeah. So anyway, Rick, I got this gig because they heard me on Austin's. And the first one I did on Austin's, I was drinking, so it was very entertaining. So you can only imagine. So CBS called my agent, Melinda, who you know, and said, what do you think about Flair doing a podcast? And here I am 5 weeks in. So, and I'm lucky because I have a wealth of friends from all these years in the business. But, we could discuss our personal accolades and all that. But I want to say from the bottom of my heart that, you rocked my world and I rocked yours, I think, on a very equal basis. We made music like nobody's ever made. And probably the greatest compliment that I've heard in the last 20 years, which is saying a lot, is that my daughter Ashley right now is currently engaged in a series of matches with a girl named Sasha Banks, and Ashley's name is Charlotte, her wrestling name.
Yeah.
And they're comparing their matches. They're saying they're as good as Steamboat and Flair.
Wow, that's awesome.
So to hear that someone say that to me about my daughter, I'm thrilled because. You and I have discussed it 1,000 times. I was 40 and you were 35 in '89. So, and we started wrestling when I was 30 and you were 26. So, how many I bet we had 100 better than that in Greenville on a Monday night, right?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. A lot of times when I'm doing stuff like this, talking on radio to different, wrestling fans and DJs and this and that, I always tell them, I said, you guys never got a chance to see the matches that we saw, like in Charleston or, Greensboro or, Charlotte. I've got a particular match in Charlotte that I always refer to, and it holds a big, strong memory in my mind. And it puts you over in a position to which our wrestling guys today have to understand timing, And if we get into this discussion today, I'll go ahead and tell that story.
Well, no, go ahead.
You go ahead and tell it. Just don't tell the one. Oh, you can now. I'm divorced. You can tell the one about the 3 times you went out to. What the hell's the name of that place? You told me that.
Oh, you're talking about the what was the name of that club?
Who knows?
It was in the late 70s.
Yeah, Conrad will love that. I'll name the club. Will come to me. Tell the other story.
All right, this was like I'm going to say early 80s.
2001.
The 2001 club.
Yeah.
You want me to tell that story?
Yeah, you can tell that first. We got a bunch of them.
Okay.
We got time.
It's a very innocent story. This was a time in which they turned you babyface, and we were wrestling, and Piper at the time was also a babyface.
Yep.
So you, myself, and Piper were all babyfaces, and there was a time in Charlotte to which we have Piper, my partner. Then 2 weeks later, they wrestled in Charlotte at that time it was called Independence Arena. Now it's Bojangles, and you were my partner. And that created a lot of interest. But on the first time after the show, we would go down to the 2001 club. Me, you, Piper, and of course there'd be the entourage of fans and also wrestlers / girlfriends and wives.
Slash.
And then the owner of the place had an area for us, seating area.
Bill Cartwright. Bill Cartwright.
Couches and stuff like that. Had our own bar. Well, to make a long story short, at the end of the night, the bar tab was $1,000. Now, you go back to like 1980, 81, $1,000. So here comes Rico. He comes up to me and Piper, and he said, "All right, guys, bar tab tonight is $1,000. I'm gonna tip them $200. So it's $1,200, and we're gonna split it 3 ways." And I looked at you and I said, I've had 3 beers tonight, Rico.
What do you say?
3 beers.
Sorry.
And Roddy, of course, Roddy was all for it. There's no telling what he injected into his body.
Injected.
So we, $400 a piece. Okay. 2 weeks later, Charlotte Coliseum. Here comes the 3 of us. Back to the 2001 club. Another $1,000 bar tab. $200 tip, split 3 ways. 2 weeks later, a 3rd time. And after the 3rd time, I got Roddy and you together, and I said, okay, guys, that's it. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that one of us There's been 3 times in a row. There's 3 of us flipping the bill for all the arena rats and all the groupies and all the boys and the girlfriends / wives.
Arena rats.
It's just been the 3 of us that have been paying for this, three guys doing it 3 times. I take a rocket scientist. I figured, I paid for one of these $1,200 nights, and at the end of that, at those 3 nights at the 2001 club. I don't know what kind of money that would translate today. You're talking 35 years later. But $1,200 bucks with a ton of money.
Well, I got to tell, before we start getting serious, I got to tell one better than that. So 1978, I'm not the world champion. I'm just the U.S. champion, or I was chasing him one way or another. But we were smoking hot and selling out every arena. And so Christmas week of 78, because I had just bought the house in Montebello, Rick, and you had the house on Carmel Road, remember?
Yes.
Up on the hill. Okay, so...
Yes. God, you got a good memory.
Yeah, well, I stayed there during my first divorce, if you remember correctly. Your place.
Midnight.
I shared the Cool Whip with you on top of the hill.
You know what you showed up with? It's midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, knock on, I go answer the door. There's Ric Flair standing. He's got his wrestling bag in one hand, which was a halibut. And in the other hand, he's got about 3 or 4 of his $5,000 Rhodes.
That's all I got now. Listen, Rick, so... Anyway, and so Rick and I go to the office, and they hand me, and we wrestled Christmas week, okay, which was the biggest week for us. That meant wrestling, we had Christmas Eve off, but we wrestled twice on Christmas Day, and then we wrestled big events, big venues all week long. So for 7 days.
Between there and New Year's.
And we were wrestling at that point, Rick and I were probably doing, I'm guessing, either an hour draw or 45, 50 minutes every night, twice on Christmas Day and then twice on the weekend, so 9 times of wrestling, right?
Right.
But we both got a check for $8,800 for the week in 1978.
Wow.
And I called him and I said, Jesus Christ, Rick, thank you, man. What the hell, $8,000? And he goes to me, yeah, but I'm tired of this bullshit, working on holidays. Rick, it's pushing me. It's taxing my marriage. I don't like being gone as much. I said, what'd you just say to me? I said, I'll meet you at the bar in about a half hour, man. He actually was going to quit.
Wow.
He called George Scott and said, I'm tired of this shit. I got better things to do. I said, what do you got better to do than make $8,000? I already spent mine. I need to make 8 more next week.
Do you remember
that?
That is a true story, fans and comrades. I do. Yeah.
I go. You are what? I don't know. I've never known you to be on drugs, but somebody is giving you something over the holidays. He just said, I'm quitting. He called him George Scott. Scott called me and said, Steamboat quit. I said, what?
Yeah.
God.
That's one of the stupid Ricky Steamboat decisions. Or statements.
No, that's okay. We got you back on track. It took about 48 hours, but you were fine.
Is it okay to tell a story about a match that that George Scott set up and all that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rick, tell anything. Anything goes.
All right. We're wrestling in Charlotte Coliseum, and like you said, we have wrestled so many times there, and did 1 hour draws, Broadway's, And George goes, look, you 2 guys tonight, let's flip Rick over, Flair, and give him really something hot. And you don't need to go all night. I mean, you guys have worked here so many times to 1 hour draws. He said, because, you looked at me and you said, I didn't want to beat Steamboat and I didn't want to beat Flair. So you go out there and wrestle to a draw. The fans go away knowing that they saw a hell of a match. But tonight, let's throw a monkey wrench into this situation. And Flair, you go over, you come up with something hot, and, just give me 20, 25 minutes. Well, we're not even warmed up at 25 minutes. So we both said, okay. So, and he just said, what do you want? I said, what do you want to do? He says, when it's right, I'll be in the corner like I do, begging off, and you come in, give me one of your big chops or something during your comeback, and I'll just sweep your feet out from under you and put my feet up on the second rope and tell Tommy to get down and count. So we go out there and we work. We have our match 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 minutes, 55 minutes. Now, the fans have already been conditioned that when us two go that long, they're all sitting there, and they say, oh, it's another draw. It's another Broadway, right? So 56. And at this time, back in those days, the announcer would count, 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left. 58 gone, 2 minutes left, ladies and gentlemen. 59, 1 minute left. And here we go, 1 minute. And I'm waiting from the call from you. And here we go, 30 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, 30 seconds left. And then we get down to 15. You beg off in the corner. I charge in. You sweep my feet out from under me. You tell Tommy, get down and count. You got your feet up there in the second rope. Now, as the announcer is counting 10, 9, 8, Tommy goes 1, 2, 3, and there's the big clock we used to hang in the center of the Charlotte Coliseum, like they use for basketball. We roll out of that. I'm laying on my back. I'm sucking air through my asshole by this time. I'm blowed up, and you look over at me and you go, "We got him, kid." Because when he did the 1, 2, 3, there was about a 3-second silence. Coliseum sold out, and then here it comes. Here comes the roar, and the stuff's flying, and you take off, and you're running back to the heel locker room, and they're throwing stuff at you and everything like that. What a moment. This is what I was saying early on when we first hooked up today, and I said, Ric Flair and his timing. How much closer could you have got to that where you did a screw finish on me when there was 4 seconds left on the clock?
Well, as a FYI, you're the only person in the business except Shawn Michaels that I could probably have ever done that with.
Well, thank you very much, but that,
he's the only guy.
And of the 1,000 times that we worked with each other, that match just sticks out in my head, and something I'll never forget. I don't know if any of the boys today could ever duplicate something like that, but that was all on your shoulders. That was your call. That was your timing. You had to watch me and do your stuff, and at the same time listen for the announcer making his call, and it was a tremendous moment.
Yeah, well,
it's one of those moments that never was filmed. Never taped. Just a house show. Something like that. God, what a thing it would be to put on a DVD and play back. A moment.
Yeah, you know what's wrong with that, Rick? You know what happened when, which a lot of people, I don't even know if Conrad knows that, when Crockett went bankrupt and they had to sell to Turner.
Yeah.
Prior to going bankrupt, the last year, they dubbed old tapes. So all those matches back then, like in the 70s with you and me and Wahoo and Mulligan and you and Jay and Slaughter and Canoodle and all those. Well, those were in the 80s, I guess. But anything from the 70s, unless it was a YouTube deal or something like that, all that stuff that they were dubbing over.
Yeah.
All the stuff with me and Mulligan where he tore up my robe and all that thing, remember? And then the time... he wore it too, right? Beg pardon?
He put it on and wore it.
He wore, it was my peacock robe, because I stomped on the hat that Wiggle and Jennings gave him. It was a great angle. They put the pantyhose up everywhere, but the best angle in the history of the business, I'll still say it was the one when you and me, where I wore the lime green thong. with Ernie Ladd's workout socks in the front for the cushion and for the look, and you tore off all my clothes.
Yeah, and I couldn't get the tie off. Not turn the tie. So you're standing there with a tie, lime green undies, and knee socks up to your knees.
Yeah, exactly.
This is like 78-ish.
No, 77 when you first came, because they had me beat your ass the first time, and we went around, and there was nobody there. The next week,
Yeah, that was the time
he
he did
stripped
the
me
famous
naked, and we
interview.
sold out everything.
Yeah, you rubbed my face in the concrete, and then I had to go backstage and let Harley Race sandpaper my face.
I know. God.
Oh, wow.
I'm
We got to
sorry.
hear that story.
I'm sorry about that.
You know, I had a discoloration on over. He sandpapered me so much that he took the eyebrow off of one side, and I had a burned discoloration. I looked like Spot the dog.
Yeah, it was terrible.
And 6 months later, I'd walk into a 7-Eleven or something, and the cashier, you know, in the Carolinas, they all watch wrestling. They're Mid-Atlantic, and he says, "Oh my God, that was real.
Yeah.
That was real. Your face. I mean, that happened 6 months ago, and your face is still disfigured."
Yeah, well, Harley, you know, it's funny because we're up upstairs in the old WRL locker room, and Harley tells David Crockett, he said, "Get some sandpaper."
That is right. He told David Crockett.
And Crockett.
David brings back what they call the variety pack.
Yeah, I'd never seen this.
There's about 10 sheets, and the top one is just like very, very fine.
Yeah.
And Harley reaches down and pulls out the bottom sheet, and it looks like there's granite rocks on the piece of sandpaper.
He
he
folded
he gets a couple of boys to hold me down my arms, and he says, "This is going to hurt, kid." And he starts sandpapering my face.
No, worse than that, Rick. First, he folded it, and he cut you with it. Then he sandpapered to the cuts.
Right.
He put 5 slits. I mean, like you know, with the sandpaper, put 5 slits in Rick's under his eye, and then he sandpapered it. It was brutal. I mean, it was brutal. And then what
was this, like 82? When was this?
No, it's 77, 78. Harley was the world champion. I mean, and then what really was brutal is they put methylate on top of it. Oh, Steamer was screaming like a God, he was mad.
Oh, yeah.
No, the methylate had to hurt the worst, like pouring alcohol on it.
Wow.
Yeah, but he literally had it for a year.
You remember the one-shot hard way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when you hit me, right?
We're outside of the ring.
Was that Harley hitting you?
We're outside of the ring, and we're sitting on the cement floor, and you're standing behind me, and you take my chin, and you tilt it back, and you go, like, "Sorry, kid." And we won hard way, and here it came to make my eyes swell up, shut and swell. Yeah.
I wasn't very good at that either.
I don't know. Bray Wyatt disagrees.
Yeah, Bray Wyatt. Yeah. That was just a timing issue. He ducked when I said stand still. Oh, God. Well, those are amazing days. I mean, you know, it's so funny because, you know, here we are. I bought this house that was ahead of its time in Montebello, which is a really nice area in Charlotte, and Rick would come over, and back then he would hold Megan. Remember the pit in that house, Rick?
Oh, yeah, by
and
the
Megan
fireplace.
would sit in your lap. I mean, it was amazing. And Harley would be there. Everybody before we went up to either Thanksgiving or Christmas for Greensboro, you know.
Right.
And
those were the big shows.
I'm thinking it was Christmas.
Yeah, and here's Megan now, and Megan just turned 40, and here she was sitting in Rick's lap. She was about 5 years old.
Wow.
Right.
That's how long we've been friends, man. Think about that.
Yeah.
All the ladies love Slick Rick. You know they love Wooooo Nation. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
Do you love listening to your favorite podcasts on Play.it? Sign up today for the Play.it newsletter to receive monthly updates on new podcasts, notable guests, trending shows, and more. Sign up now at playitnewsletter.com. That's playitnewsletter.com. Hear what you've been missing.
The greatest talker in the history of the business is behind the mic once again. This is Wooooo Nation with Ric Flair.
So when did you guys first meet? Did y'all meet with Vern, or was it after that?
No, what happened was, and I'll tell the story because the guy's name, if I don't do if I don't hear it, if I don't use the name, I'll forget it. I went to Atlanta TV, and he had just come to Atlanta from Minneapolis.
Okay.
Richard Blood. So I see him, and I go, holy shit. I come back and tell Crockett, I said, there's a guy down there that'll be unbelievable. And so, and Crockett goes, what's his name? I said, Richard Blood. I said, but, you know, he could go as Sam Steamboat's kid. We could do something right. And what happened is Crockett called Barnett. Oh, my boy. I do like one-man gang. And so one-man gang went to Georgia, and we got Ricky Steamboat.
Wow.
But
that's
boy,
a hell of a trade.
was that an uphill battle, man, because every babyface in the territory, from Johnny Weaver went upside down. Here comes Mr. America walking through the door, looked like Steve Reeves winning the Mr. America contest, right?
Right.
They were so jealous. I never saw anything like it. Remember, Rick?
Oh, yeah.
Holy cow, they wouldn't even talk to him. Wooooo, Paul Jones, and those guys, they were miserable. Here comes this kid looking like Mr. America, right? Carrying a surfboard. Jeez, are you kidding? I wish I still had a picture of that thing they made. The only thing that Crockett ever did right in marketing is they made this picture of him with a carrying a surfboard down at Myrtle Beach. Remember that, Rick?
Well, they did two posters of me, one with a surfboard and one with me standing there with some jeans on and no shirt.
Yeah. You know? I mean, this was way before Kerry Von Erich and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And he was so damn good looking, and his physique was so outstanding. But boy, you know, back then, that's Ricky's kind of one of those guys that started to change that time when a bayfish, you know, couldn't weigh 300 pounds anymore, or couldn't weigh 250.
Right.
You know, this was a weight-trained guy with a good amateur background. I mean, the only guy like him in the business at that time who was considerably older than Rick was Jack Brisco. Jack had a good natural, not a weight trained as much as just a natural physique, but it's like I always tell, there's two guys that no matter how hard they try, they could never be bad. Is Jack Brisco was just too damn handsome, but he had to work heel once in a while, but nobody really liked him as a heel. And Ricky couldn't be a heel. I mean, you take Ricky Steamboat, Sting, and Jack Brisco, there's three guys that could never be heels.
Right.
Jack Brisco could once in a while but against Dory or Terry or Harley, who's going to be the heel, right?
Sure.
I guess he was against Wooooo when he worked with Wooooo in Charlotte. But if you take Stinger and Jack and Ricky Steamboat, I mean, they're just guys that you're just too nice a guy to ever be a bad guy anyway, Rick. Does that make sense?
Well,
sometimes you have to.
That. Yeah, there's just a handful of us that worked through their whole career, and I mean by, you know, having a 20-plus year career and stayed on one side of the fence through the whole career, you know, never jumped ship, not once. Although in 91, I did go to, you know, promotion to say, you know, I'd like to work heel, you know, because about that time I had about 16, 17 years in, and I said, you know, before I exit out, I'd like to at least experience it one time. And then Pat Patterson said, you know, Ricky, no way, you're just a baby face, and that's all you'll be. And I look back on it now, and I kind of thank him because of that fact. It's just a handful of us that just, you know, I started out as a babyface and ended as a babyface 20 years later.
So when you went to the WWF in 91, I guess you went back rather, and they put you with, you know, the headdress deal and the breathing fire and all that. Whose idea was that, and how do they pitch that? What does that look like?
That was Vince's idea, and wanted to repackage me was the verbiage, and just like starting over, and I also almost like, you know, starting over even on the card. I was, you know, doing the second, third match, wrestling Haku, and was going to do a slow build on me and build me back up, but they wanted to repackage me with, you know, bringing the fire in and the dragon outfit.
Kind of going.
That's how that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you're listening to Woo Nation right here with Ric Flair. Of course, we're on Play.it, and you can follow our guest on Twitter, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He's on Twitter at Real Steamboat, so check him out there. Ricky, let's talk briefly about when you first left Crockett and went to Vince in New York the first time. There was talk at the time, and maybe this was just kayfabe stuff, that you were thinking about getting out of the business and opening gyms, and then it wasn't too long after that you were working for Vince. What happened there, and what was the reason for the departure from the Crockett's?
Well, you know, this is what happened. I came to the Carolinas in '77. This was late '84. Been there for 7 years, working as a babyface. George had left, and they had went to the WWF at that time to work alongside with Vince as the booker. And Dusty came in to book. Now, Dusty's got a great mind on his shoulders, but it's kind of hard to deal with a guy that was still working and also the guy with the pencil,
right?
The booker. And he put Tully Blanchard and I together. And at that time, Tully was the TV champion. And in the Mid-Atlantic area, even though it was a main event match, and all main event matches were 60 minutes, the TV championship was on the line for the first 15. And that was because, that would be the time limit on television. So he put me and Tully together, Dusty did, and we wrestled all North and South Carolinas and, up into Virginias. And I'd go over, like in 17, he'd go home with the championship, and I'd win the match. So we did that. Then we got back on TV, and Crockett, extended the time limit from 15 to 20 or 25 or something. So we went all the way around the territory and did that. And I could never win the championship from him. And after a couple of tours, Dusty booked himself with Tully and Greensboro, and 15-minute time limit, went out there and beat him in 12 minutes.
Wow.
And became the champion. So I saw the writing on the wall, kind of, sort of, at the time, to which all I did was just make Tully look good. No, Tully's a hell of a worker, too. And but just using me as at that time, the Mid-Atlantic's top babyface. And then he brought Nikita in, Nikita Koloff, and we did a thing on TV to which I had a match, went over, and I was walking back to the locker room. I turned around, and Nikita came flying down the aisle, to which I knew, and, his clothesline was called the Russian sickle. Well, when he hit me from behind, I thought my head was out there in the upper bleachers somewhere.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw there that I was going to work with Nikita and end up putting him over, and just for Dusty to pencil himself in and work with Nikita. And, of course, that would be, Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, USA against the Russian. So I gave a call to George, and we started talking. The next thing you know, they flew me up, and I started working for the WWE at the time. And I got to give thanks to Dusty for that, because then my career took off in a different direction, but I think it bumped up another level because I started working for them.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this with any malice, but I had to work with Nikita a lot. That was a handful, man.
Especially when he was
I know.
He was green, right?
Yeah, the Russian sickle. He just, in all fairness, his real name being Scott Simpson, is that he lived that gimmick better than anybody I've ever seen in the history of the business.
Oh yeah, he even changed his legal name.
Yeah, but he never talked. I mean, he did a real good job, but he's just one of those guys that really never he never really had a clue in the ring. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the finer points, the finesse.
He didn't have to,
right?
Because he was a gimmick, and the people believed it, and he drew money, and it's what. But I know what Ricky's saying about knocking your head off your shoulders, because he never loosened up. He never, which I give a lot of guys. I'll say a lot of guys never had the chance or the ring time. Or I think he was trained by Eddie Sharkey. I mean,
he was a Minnesota boy too.
Yeah, but right? he wasn't a Vern Gagne guy, So
no.
He didn't have to do the 500 free squats and all that, So
and he was big at that time, wasn't he, Rick?
285. Yeah.
Yeah.
They made that vignette with him in the dungeon, which was way ahead of its time, and that thing really put him over. Just somebody's garage. But they made it look like he was down in a dungeon training with Ivan Koloff, remember? And, he had the neck harness on and all that, and he had huge traps, and he looked the part. And the gym that we all went to back then, which Rick and I saw each other every day at, was King's Gym before it became World Gym. It may have been World by the time he got there. And he would never talk to anybody. He'd walk around the gym every day. I don't think he ever said a word of English in the gym for 2 or 3 years.
No, and if he did have to talk, it'd always be in that Russian accent.
Yeah, I mean, he would just make a noise, because he couldn't, he couldn't speak Russian, obviously, but Yeah, but he had a funny career. He didn't hang around that long, and then tried to come back. I can remember we tried to get him to come to Atlanta, and he came down and said, "I just don't want to do it." So, but he made his money. I guess he's doing okay.
Yeah,
I think he's involved in ministry now and stuff like that.
He is, yes, sir.
So,
Ricky, once you got to the WWF, you had been, spent a great portion of your career at that point working for the Crockett's. What was the biggest difference you noticed in working for the Crockett's versus working for the McMahons?
Well, at the early stages of WrestleMania, to me it was the scope of everything. The venues of the large cities and the production level of TV. It just seemed like it was making it bigger than life. To me, we were just used to doing work in studios and stuff like that. And, not knowing, I didn't know at the time that how the business was going to grow, but you just had some kind of gut feeling that this thing was way different than the way the business had been projected for the past, prior 50 years.
And one of the big ways, that Vince really took the company national when we're talking about bigger television products was, of course, Saturday night's main event. And you famously had a match, an angle with Jake the Snake Roberts there. And, Rick, I don't know, did you know about the DDT on the floor?
No, I was always working. I mean, I didn't see a lot of that stuff because I was working every time,
Right.
Even when Tully and I were there, I never got to see it because our schedule was completely different than theirs. They taped on Tuesdays, and that time they weren't on Raw at that time. They were taping at network TV for NBC, right? Am I saying that right, Rick?
Right.
When you guys would tape every other Tuesday, I did a little of that too in the 90s when I went. But no, I never even saw. As a matter of fact, I was wrestling Sting. When he wrestled Macho. I was in a Clash of Champions with Sting. Am I saying that right, Rick?
That is correct.
Yeah, you guys were in Detroit for that one, right?
Yeah, 1987.
Yeah, 87. I was wrestling Sting in Greensboro at the Clash of Champions. So I never even saw their match. I just heard the next day, which pissed me off, that Ricky Steamboat said he had the best match of his life. And I said, well, just because he won.
Well, let's just go ahead and talk about that.
I'm just kidding. But I mean, I couldn't have been happier because I know how good Ricky Steamboat is, but it just I didn't. The whole thing. It's the truth. If you're booking and you're in a working and you're a bayface, it never works out. It just doesn't, because if you're booking and you like he said with Dusty, who has so much talent and so much charisma, but he was going to push himself. But Ricky was so over in the territory. There's always, in my estimation, there's room for 2 or 3 guys. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but what happens is they come and they want to get their own guys they're familiar with and all that, and Magnum kind of took over Rick's spot, you know what I mean? And Magnum was going to be the next guy and probably would have been the champion had it not been for the terrible car wreck, that he was in. I think they were pushing Magnum to be the next world champion. So
I agree, Rick. I heard they were grooming him for that NWA spot. Yeah,
no, I'm sure they were, because I was working with him all the time and putting him over, and he was a great guy, a great kid too. I mean, I was in Birmingham, Alabama, when someone called me and told me about the car wreck, and I just. He was
a Virginia Beach kid, right?
Yes, he's up there. And I mean, he actually wrestled in college for a little bit up at Old Dominion, and then, but Jesus, not to change the subject from but you and I know how hard it was with Vern. But when Gene and Ole, when they had that building over on Fairview, where the Crockett's, where we used for the big building when they bought later on. Remember, Rick?
Yeah.
And God, they brought Terry Allen down for to break him in, and Buzz Sawyer was there. Oh my God, they beat up Terry Allen so bad. Buzz Sawyer was tough.
Yeah.
And it was Ole, Gene, and Buzz Sawyer. They beat up Terry Allen so bad. I saw him. We walk on the parking lot.
You said they beat up their hands so bad on him?
They what?
You said they beat up their hands
They
so
beat
bad?
him up so bad.
Okay, I thought you were they hurt their hands on him.
No.
Like, wow, okay, that's another thing.
Gene Anderson was a sadistic son of a bitch boy. And Ole was kind of a bully, and they just, they stretched these guys and, beat the crap out of them. And he had to be in pretty good shape to have wrestled in college. And I think he was a state champion of Virginia. I don't think he went to Granby or anything like that, but anyway, he had a good amateur background, but those guys, it was so hard to get in the business down then. And, it's like, oh, God, they almost killed the Iron Sheik when the Sheik came in. And the Sheik was tougher than hell.
Right.
But, the way Gene and Ole would get these guys to run up and down stairs and do 1,000 squats and then get in the ring with them.
Right.
Very similar to the way Bill Watts and Eddie Graham did with guys. They loved to, beat up guys. That's one of the reasons I've always admired Jack Brisco. Brisco would never go down to the sportatorium. You know these stories, Rick. And stretch, and he had Bob Roop would beat the crap out of these guys, and Jack would never do it. Either would Jerry, because they'd beat a guy that was already exhausted. You know what I mean? But Ole and Gene was so poor. I said, "Hang in there, kid. You'll be okay. It'll get better." I said, "If you hang in there for a couple times, you'll be fine."
You think about that happening back in the day, in the 70s. You think about how many good talent might have come out if they didn't quit because of getting their ass handed to them.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like you, but it's funny. After what I went through, and I quit 3 times, and thank God Vern made me come back. But after what I went through, I didn't feel bad for him. I'm sure you went through the same thing.
Oh yeah,
Vern was tougher than hell with us, and I had Bill. Did you have Billy Robinson too?
Oh, he'd come down and, after we, Cosgrove put us, the Sheik put us through doing, 1,000 squats and 1,000 push-ups, and then here comes Robinson, and, he was a bully.
Oh, of course he was, but
He bloodied my nose and lip up a few times.
Were you in the barn as well, right?
No, we were in the basement of the building that Vern just moved his office to.
Over in Excelsior, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I was in the barn, and 30 below weather, or 30-degree weather, I was miserable. Oh. But I look back at it now, and I'm glad I went through it, And I think it, even though I quit 3 times, I'm glad I finished it. Obviously I am, but...
let me tell you real quick, Cosgrove there, in that building was 20 stories, and starting at the basement, it was 21. So we were in the stairwell, and we were running... steps running stairs up to the top and run back down.
Yeah.
And then Cos got the idea. He paired us off, and then you get a guy up on your shoulders, fireman carry, and then you carry a guy up 21 flights.
Oh, I know. Hey, listen, they were queer. Are you kidding? God, I did that stuff with Paul Ellering in Japan.
Yeah.
I said, Paul, I love you. I'm going to do the free.
He gets to the top, and you drop the guy, you run back down, and then he carries you up.
Yeah. Well, you weren't do you know, here's a story very few people know. Do you remember the name Brian Oldfield?
God,
he had the world record in the shot put. He won the Olympics.
Okay.
Brian Oldfield.
I got it. Yeah, I got it.
And he showed up in Excelsior. I've heard the story 100 times. Handsome, big, 6'5", 280 pounds, built like a Greek god, blonde hair. And he tells Vern he wants to be a wrestler. They sent him downstairs with Cosgrove. He left the building crying 2 hours later. Nobody ever saw him again.
Wow.
This was the guy that won the Olympic gold medal and had the world record. He's the guy the first guy to do 70 feet, Brian Oldfield. See, I am just athletic. I am like a mind trust.
You really are.
A brain trust.
It's impressive.
Yes, I raced Jesse Owens.
I'll be right back. It's time to shine my 16 world titles.
There's something for every sports fan on CBSLocalSports.com. Watch live radio shows and original video programming while reading national articles from some of the best writers in the country. Visit CBSLocalSports.com today.
The greatest talker in the history of the business is behind the mic once again. This is Wooooo Nation with Ric Flair.
So one of my favorite stories about Ricky Steamboat, we could talk all day long, is the day that he did a 465-pound bench press at WRLA TV. Clean. Straight. I'm not kidding you. After wrestling me for a month, an hour every night.
Wow.
Yeah, because here's what we do. We do an hour. He was training for the Mr. North Carolina contest, and his competition was Jimmy Snuka, who'd been Mr. Hawaii 5 times. I'm doing all the promotion on this contest right here. So, and everybody in the territory was into it. And it was down at the auditorium next to the Ovens Auditorium. So Steamboat and I would wrestle. And I think I was staying in this house, and I think I was having another marital issue. So we'd get in the car after the town, and I would drink. He'd say, I'm going to have 3 Miller Lights, and I'm going to eat 3 McNuggets. And don't even put anything else in front of me. And that is like, you were like, if I remember correctly, he helped me out, Rick, 60 carbs a day.
Yeah.
60 carbs a day, wrestling me an hour every night.
Unbelievable.
He would drink 3 Miller Lights and eat 3 chicken McNuggets. I would drink 12 to 15 Miller Lights, and even though I hated them, I would eat 20 McNuggets in a 300-mile drive.
So you don't hate Miller Lite. It's the chicken nuggets.
No, the McNuggets, yeah. But they were better than the hard-boiled eggs and the cheap,
sure.
What are those things called that Macho Man was selling?
Oh, yeah, Slim Jims.
Slim Jims, yeah. But that's what he ate. And we'd get to his house, he'd say, here. He would hand me a bowl of Cool Whip. That was his way to go. I said, I can't live off Cool Whip. Of course,
that was my dessert.
No, I know, but you had your rice all prepared. I mean, this guy had it laid out. He was way ahead of his time.
Right.
In weighing his
meals,
meal preparation. Like that's what my daughter Ashley does now. When she goes somewhere, Rick, you can order prepared meals, right?
Right.
And she has them delivered. She spends $500 sending prepared meals out on the road with her. I go, okay, honey, it sounds like a lot, but if that's what you want to do. But I mean, she looks like it too, so she'd been rewarded with that gift. But Rick was doing that back, wrestling me for an hour every night, which was not like we didn't do what they call rest holds. He went from 230 to what, 195 for the contest?
199.
199, yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Frank Zane, man, he was the king of, what did you tell me all the time? He said, I might not be that big, but I've got, what's the word? Not continuity.
Pleasing to the eye.
No. There's a word, though, for bodybuilders when everything is, I've got symmetry, Nate. Symmetry. Yeah. He was Frank Zane before Frank Zane, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah, true story. And he won the contest. And Snuka was, looked like $1 million, but Rick, his calves, everything was just symmetrical, no steroids, clean, and still bench pressing 465 pounds.
Unbelievable.
That's a lot. Because we had some guys in the business back then that could jack some weight. I mean, both Bravo and Atlas could bench well over 500.
Right.
But I think they had a little help along the way.
Well.
Yeah, they were.
I spotted Atlas. He did 5 for 5.
Huh?
I spotted Atlas one time when he did 500 for 5 reps.
Yeah, well, that was on amino acids, right?
Yeah.
You're listening to Wooooo Nation right here on Play.
And just so you know, they could have given me anything and I couldn't bench 505. So taking nothing away from it.
Well, we talked a little bit about the Macho Man match at WrestleMania 3, and those are probably your 2 biggest opponents, or the matches you hear the most about. Isn't that right, Ricky? I mean, when you talk about Macho Man and Ric Flair, those are the 2 big opponents, right?
Without a doubt, everywhere I go, I'm doing appearances and stuff now, working for the company, and it's a flip of a coin when a fan comes up, which one they talk about. The matches that Rick and I had and the WrestleMania 3 with Savage. It's always those 2.
Tell us about the differences in working with Randy Savage and working with Ric Flair.
Well, like I said, in that Charlotte match with 4 or 5 seconds left on the clock, just going to the ring, and I only knew that when he felt it was right, he's just going to sweep my feet out and put his feet up in the second ropes, in the corner, and that was it. Nothing else was said. Nothing else. And Randy's match, from start to finish, was completely thought out, and talked out, and even stepped through and all that. It was a completely different animal for me because I'm so used to just calling it in the ring and feeling this moment and that. But Randy had it A through Z, and I will say with that match, what made it different, customarily, you'd have your shine in the beginning for the babyface, and maybe babyface get a false finish or two, then you segue into your heat section, and the heel will get a number of his false finishes in, and then you go to the comeback, and babyface has a couple false finishes during that comeback, and then you have the finish, whoever was going over. So, blueprint match, 8 or 9, false finishes in the course of a standard match. We had 22 false finishes in that match. And to remember 22 false finishes, that's the part that stressed me out. I was so happy that when that match was over, just because we got all the 22 false finishes in. And it sort of, I think from that point on, everybody started taking notice about how different that was because of all that false finish. And my only, when Randy and I started that thing, I said, I think the biggest thing is let's focus on the championship, and that would be, you trying to beat me to stop me from getting it, and me trying to beat you and get it. And that's where we just started coming up with false finish after false finish.
Yeah, how long was that match?
Less than 17 minutes.
Wow, that's a lot of false finishes.
Yeah, we were false.
I could have never
false
done
finishes,
that.
Yeah, it seemed every 45 seconds we were false finishing one another.
Yeah, I was just taking my first face bump at 17 minutes. and having you press slam me. I hadn't even taken over on you at that point yet.
Yeah. And press slam you, boom, and the next thing we chop off the top, boom, and we cover, take out, grab a hold.
Yeah, it was the best. God.
So, Ricky, last year
I remember when you started doing the upside down thing in the turnbuckle.
Yeah, and you chopped me running down it.
Yeah. And that chop, you didn't know it was coming. That was right out of the blue. I just said, wow.
I know.
What a moment this would be.
Yeah.
And you take the chop and throw your feet way up in the air and flip backwards and land on the floor. And it just, if I was going to do a dive through the ropes on you as you started the feet up and saw me coming.
Yeah, because, one thing that you and I did, I think we were the first ones to do it, maybe Harley did it with Dory, I don't remember, but you have to really trust your opponent to catch him in that crossbody and go over the rope backwards.
Yeah.
The guy you're catching, right, and I never caught Rick. Rick always caught me.
Right.
Because I just wasn't good at it like that. But, some guys can do it. I could dive on Rick. And trust me, I was not, I wasn't Edward Carpenti. I couldn't even jump that high. But Rick knew I would take his head, we'd land.
Right.
But we started doing that, and nobody had done that I'd seen for a long time.
I had not seen anybody do that. We did that, I think, in our Chi-Town match in Chicago.
Yeah, for the first time, because he does not grab the rope at all. He just trusted me to tuck his head in. And the momentum takes us over. He doesn't touch the rope at all. And then he lands on top of me or next to me.
Does this deal and hooks.
Yeah, everybody else hooks it when you're doing it like that. But he was holding my body and trusted me to take him over. Nobody was doing it at that point. So it was.
I was selling up. My back would be close to the ropes. You take off, and here you come charging and hit me with a crossbody, and we're just freewheeling it. We're both going over the top, not grabbing nothing. We're just freewheeling it. Yeah,
I mean, it was. It's so easy with him and me in the ring. And I said this about you the other day, Rick. I was telling somebody that, if it had been something to do, that Ricky Steamboat would have done a moonsault.
Sure.
Okay. If someone had said, Ricky, do a moonsault on the announcer table, people weren't doing that.
Right.
But it's not that Ricky Steamboat couldn't do it. He had no reason to. If somebody had started doing it, certainly Rick could do anything. He was that kind of an athlete.
Right.
But it wasn't called for then. And what we did, it was so different, as we set a pace that nobody could keep up with. I mean, we didn't, we never sat in a hold. We didn't have to because the people didn't sit down.
And our challenges on cardio.
Yeah.
Even though that it was never said between you and I, but I knew that there was always an underlining challenge in our matches of who could blow who up.
Yeah.
It was. Although the verbiage was never translated back and forth between him and I. And even the challenge would go into the weight room because that's when the Stairmaster was popular, and we'd be side by side, and we'd crank it up to 20 and go for 30 minutes on the Stairmaster, just like crazy.
Yeah, I know. The difference is you slept at night periodically. I could never get Ricky Steamboat to hang out. Isn't that funny? He and Sting just found ways to avoid me at all times. No, we
had those three situations at 2001 Club, and I learned then. I said,
but we had spouses with us. Then I'm talking about when we were on the road. You would never. Ricky Steamboat was not a party guy, and I'll tell anybody that forever. He was never out doing what I was doing. Okay, and that was just drinking and saying hi to, paying my respect to the people that bought tickets.
Right.
That's just part of the job. But Rick was never.
You were living. You were. That was your image.
Yeah. The only time I could get Steamboat to drink a lot was when we were in Europe. I'll never forget the trip with you and I and Sting because Rick Steamboat is a speed freak, right? And he can build cars and he can build boats and he's multi-talented, right? I mean, I've got to pay people to do all of the above. And we rented a 735 BMW, and Ricky was driving at 160 miles an hour on the Autobahn. You and I and Sting, remember that?
Oh, yeah. The damn thing started to overheat.
Yeah. But when I got him overseas, he had a beverage, but that was about it. Oh, man.
You remember the last night in Berlin?
Yeah. The best was the flight back, you and I in Lufthansa, when we got so drunk. I got off the plane and left 3 robes, remember? Over me.
Yeah.
I left 3 robes that I carried on. By the time I got back to customs, they were long gone.
Wow.
I said, thanks, Rick.
That night in Berlin, we were drinking beer and shots of schnapps, in which I knew the schnapps was going to kill me. About 4 or 5 of us guys, we ended up splitting into 2 Volkswagen taxi cabs. I don't remember whose lap I was sitting on in the front seat, but I puked in the guy's Volkswagen glove box.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Not cool. And then we got on the plane together, flying home, and we just said, let's just do it, man. Versus 7.5 or 8 hours, we just poured them in. We got them.
You see, you were conditioned for it. I wasn't, and it was always bad for me.
No, I know. And even if you drank, you only drank beer.
Yeah.
So, whoever got it. But you can only drink so much beer in a 9.5-hour run. You got to have something else, right?
Sure.
Well, so, and then another great time. I'm sorry.
2 hours in, I'd look at you, and you look at me, and you know what kind of state I was in, and that'd be that Ric Flair laugh.
Yeah. hey, I got to say one thing, and before I'll let you go, and I got to run too. We got to wrap this one. But Rick, I will tell you one thing, and one of my proudest moments is they made the mistake in Japan of putting Ricky Steamboat and I on before the main event in Tokyo, and that'd be the proudest moment of my life because when he and I got out of the ring, they didn't think that 2 Americans would mean anything.
Sure.
They put us on in Tokyo. We were on a whole tour together for about 2 or 3 weeks, and
right.
And I was NWA champion, and
was
I
wrestled. New Japan?
No, this was Baba.
Okay.
All Japan. All Japan. Yeah. We were there for Baba, and they put me and him on in the semi-main event, and they might as well have just closed the doors when we left the ring. Because that was Jumbo Tsuruta and somebody against da-da-da-da. Forget it. Not even close. They forgot that he does look a little Japanese. Are you kidding me? And they were dying, man. 50.
Hey, Rico.
Huh?
Do you ever get any artwork from Tony Atlas?
I have not.
Well, he's a great artist, and he does everything by pencil.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And he doesn't do pencil with lines. Everything is done with a dot.
Really?
Like you take a pencil, and if you put on a clean piece of paper and put a dot on it, that's how he starts.
Wow.
And I'm sitting right here talking to you, and you mentioned the match that you and I had in Japan, and I'm looking at what I have hanging on my wall. It is about a 14 by 28 poster signed by Tony that is done with dots, and it's a picture of you and I in the middle of the ring, fighting for a top wrist lock, and the fans in the background have all got slanted eyes.
Wow.
It's a shot of you and I in that match that you just talked about.
Yeah.
In Japan.
Yeah.
And I've got it hanging on my wall.
Yeah. Well, they gave you and I those plaques, remember, afterwards?
Yeah.
They gave us these beautiful plaques. But, I mean, when I heard that we were going on, what last worked for me when I heard that they didn't think we could hold our own. I thought, okay, you haven't currently got cable TV over here. See you when I see you guys. Hey, man, Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, Rick, thank you very much for having me. And I'd like to say it with you present, because I've said this on a number of radio shows. So when I got to the Carolinas, Flair taught me everything that I learned. He taught me about timing. He taught me when to fight back. He taught me how to work. So, I don't think I would have nearly had the leaps and bounds and the levels of expertise that I had after working with you for all those years that you were my teacher.
Well, I think we learned from each other. And unfortunately, it made a lot of other people miserable. That's my take on it, because I learned a lot from you too, my friend. God bless you. I think the world of you, Rick, and our friendship means the world to me. Stay close, okay? Stay healthy.
Okay, buddy. Love you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. Yeah, that was a great interview. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Everybody talks about the 1989 matches, and you guys got to kind of reminisce. And it's easy to tell how close you guys still are all these years later.
I think the world of him, and on the money, he's just one of those guys that's just too good to be true.
And how cool is it right there at the end? He kind of gave you the kudos and said you were his teacher, and then ultimately you were the guy he beat for the first world title. I mean, really cool history between the two of you.
I wish I could tell you I was his teacher. We learned together, because I'd never wrestled anybody that could move around like that. I learned from Wooooo McDaniels, who was ultimately my teacher. Even though I was in love with Dusty, working with Wooooo, I learned how to work, more so than learning with Dusty. A little more entertainment value than I learned from Dusty, but working at a pace and with a guy as technically gifted as Steamboat really helped, put me on the map as well.
Why do you think his legacy isn't bigger than what it is? When you think about guys like yourself and Shawn Michaels, you're always at the top of the list. All the pros put Ricky right there on the list too, but in the eyes of a lot of fans, maybe he's not as high. Is that because he didn't spend as much time with Vince, or?
I think it's that, and he also wasn't with Vince as the company. I mean, if you really look at my career, it got bigger in 2001.
Right.
I mean, in wrestling, in people that follow the sport and wrestling minds like yourself or Dave Meltzer or Jim Ross, my best years were my 80s.
Right.
But the 90s and 2001 and 2008 are the years they're going to talk about the most.
Because the world changed.
And Rick was gone, yeah. See, Rick said he was in the business 20 years.
Right.
I've been in the business 42 years.
Right.
It's a big difference, and I'm only 5 years older than he is. So that's what you can't duplicate television time.
Right.
So God gave me a gift, and one of the gifts was getting to work with him.
Well, and listening to you guys was a gift for every wrestling fan. This was probably the best edition, in my opinion, of Wooooo Nation we've had so far, and I'm pumped about next week.
I am too, young man. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. It's Wooooo Nation with Conrad Thompson and the Nature Boy. Over and out. Woo!
Love listening to your favorite station? Start getting rewarded for the things you already do, like streaming your favorite radio station online. It's easy. Go to cbslocalrewards.com, sign up, and start earning points for listening to your favorite online CBS radio stations, reading articles, and viewing photo galleries on your local CBS website. Redeem your points for great prizes and gift cards from stores like Nike, Best Buy, and Amazon. Sign up today at cbslocalrewards.com. That's cbslocalrewards.com.